Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Peter Bindel. I'm the Sales Marketing Specialist here at Vendasta. And today we are going to go over how to increase sales by leveraging website speed. We are going to go through some tactics on how to sell as well as how to actually speed up those slow sites. So let's get started here. So you may have done all of this SEO work, conversion optimization on your WordPress site. You're getting those backlinks, you're pulling in content, it's great. Pages are optimized, reviews are being pulled in, you have compelling call to actions, local business listings are correct, and your website really looks great, but the needle isn't moving. Why is this? The answer probably is a lot more straightforward than a lot of businesses and agencies might think. So you might think you have a great site, but you actually might have a slow site. Poor site speed is actually one of the most common issues that websites face. And even the team here at Vendasta has had this problem, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But it definitely is a common problem, and it's something we've spoke about in past webinars. But basically, this problem is seen very often among marketers and marketing agencies. We're the ones who are supposed to kind of get it, but being early adopters and be early adopters of best practices. But oftentimes, the websites that we have personally, or even sometimes the websites we are creating, don't necessarily follow that kind of rule of speed being an important part. So really quickly, I'm going to just brush over what page speed actually is. It's a very basic question, but we're just going to kind of get that out of the way so everyone is on the same page. Maybe you're very new to websites, we'll just cover that, and then we're going to get into more of the nitty-gritty details and some technical terms on what we can actually look at here. So page speed is the amount of time it takes for the content on a website page to fully load. So in a world where people have come to expect kind of instant results, nearly half of web users expect a website to load in about 2 seconds. We talked about kind of website speed in our last webinar that was all about stats. But this is very true. So they expect to load in 2 seconds and less, and they'll actually abandon the site if it isn't loaded within 3 seconds. And this is according to a survey done by Akamai and Gomez.com. So 3 seconds is that minimum speed that a visitor is going to tolerate. And to find out if kind of general typical websites were up to the task, Pingdom used their own clients as the data source and found out that the vast majority of them answered no to that. And that's because of this data. The standards that have been being used for page load time come from a study conducted by Jeff Kenyon. And he compares website speed against the rest of the web. And these are the findings that that were found. If your site loads within 5 seconds, it's faster than only about 25% of the web. If it loads in 2.9 seconds, it's going to be 50% faster. And if it loads in 1.7 seconds, it's going to be faster than about 75% of the web. And kind of the very elite, faster than 94% of the web, that is going to be if your site loads in 0.8 of a second. So really, anything kind of 2.9 seconds, that you're already slower than 50%. So how do you determine if a page is kind of up to snuff, what the speed is? So to determine the speed, you're going to be needing to look at a few different things here. And this can also be useful if you need to check the speed for any of your clients' websites. It will be kind of useful down the road, and we'll go into it a little bit more detail. But this is kind of how you can find out a website speed. It's kind of 4 steps. So the first is going to be hopping on to the website's Google Analytics site speed report. And this will give you an idea of how the site has performed over various time periods and the load speed of each of the pages. Another way is to enter the site's URL into Google PageSpeed, Google's PageSpeed Insight tool. This will give you a report card on the website's speed and performance on mobile devices and desktop. And the report comes with some recommended actions that you can take for improving site speed. And this is also open to, you can put any website in there. And we're going to use that a little bit later here, but you'll find that a lot of sites do have a speed issue. Number 3, you can check Pingdom's website speed test and find out the average speed, rank, and percent that is faster than the average of Pingdom's tested websites. And you can also go to GT Matrix, and they will provide a comprehensive look at your site's speed and optimization status. A quick note on those last 2. If you do look at both of those, you might notice some time differences between Pingdom and GT Matrix. Basically, this is because Pingdom will show you load time, and GT Matrix will show you full load time. So as a part of your site's speed audit, which we'll kind of go into at the end of the webinar here, you can use these tools to track the optimization progress. So now we're going to talk about why speed matters. So that's how you find out the speed. And that's great information to have to know if a site is fast or slow, but why does this matter? And these points here will be really great for having a conversation with either your existing clients or potential clients on the importance of their website speed. So if they're not using any of your website solutions that you offer, great conversation for existing clients, or if you're prospecting to new clients, these are also some great points on really explaining why speed matters. So the first one here is user experience. It's probably the most important reason you should care about for website speed. People don't have the patience for slow loading sites anymore. It's something we've talked about even earlier in this webinar. But in the beginning, connecting to the internet required tolerance. You can think of that dial tone. But today, people are constantly online, and you've got that 3-second maximum to display the website, or they're gone. Like, more than 3 seconds is going to create that poor user experience. And that's what we've been talking about in our past webinars, that experience is really an important factor in websites. So the easiest way to think about this is how you personally even navigate to websites. What is your expectation for how fast a site is going to load? Would you sit there and tolerate a slow load time? that's a really good way to kind of put it in perspective. These are some questions you can ask to really get people thinking about when they go on the web and what they expect. And then you can really draw that to your website should meet your own expectations. So another great question is, what is your impression of a website that takes forever to load? You can really ask any clients or potential clients those questions to kind of get them thinking and then apply that to their website. The next is going to be the implications of SEO. So speed also is a driving force behind SEO. Google's latest search results, and this is provided by Edwin Tunin of Yoast. Google's latest search research shows that the chances of bounce increases 32% when load page times go from 1 second to 3 seconds, and 1 to 5 second increases the chance up to 90%. So if your site takes up to 10 seconds to load, the chance of bounce is going to increase by 123%. So Google has been slow to kind of officially reveal whether slow sites would receive ranking demotions, but it appears those days are kind of coming to a close here, and you need to make sure that your website is ready and managed properly, and that speed is a factor because it will affect SEO. For search engines, better results and performance is a sign of a healthy site that customers are looking for and pleases them, and that should be rewarded with a higher ranking. And so the third one here is really the idea behind speed. It kills conversion. So your site speed has an effect on those conversions, and it should catch your attention. How you can move people through the funnel quicker, you won't be able to move them through the funnel quickly if each step takes forever. It needs to go fast. And your super fans, they'll move through that funnel slowly. But those customers that your clients have that are either new or hesitant, they are prone to buyer's remorse and will often bounce. There was a study done recently by Soasta on one of their mPulse customers, and they were a leading online retailer that enjoys pretty significant traffic, about 1.5 million sessions, and that is for mobile traffic. In terms of conversions, the sweet spot was about 2.4 seconds. Pages that were 1 second faster experienced a 27% conversion rate increase, and at 4.2 seconds, the average conversion rate dropped below 1%. By the 6-second mark, the mobile conversion rate had completely plateaued. So this graph makes implications pretty clear that slow page load times hurt conversion rates. So the deductive reasoning behind this would indicate that focusing on increasing site speed should help the conversion rate. So those are kind of 3 things that you want to be looking at here. That speed hurts user experience, that it affects SEO, and that it hurts conversion. So that means you need to speed up those websites. Your clients need to be looking at speeding up those websites, and you can help them. But you need ways to speed up those websites. So now we're going to go over a few ways to actually speed up a website. It's not necessarily going to be a quick, easy thing. If they're small websites, they might just need a couple of these tactics. However, if the site's really large or older with a lot of code, it may require some persistence and implementation of several of these topics over a long period of time. So if you want to add kind of a little street cred if you're new to websites, these are some good terms to throw in. And I'll talk a bit more on how to actually use these to sell. But ultimately, these will actually be important to know for how to actually speed up the websites and actually move that needle and to help either your existing clients or clients that you're onboarding. So we'll kind of dig into a few of these tactics now. The first one is leveraging browser caching. Now, when you visit a site, your browser often caches the page on the site to speed up the load time. Browser caching stores website resource files on a local computer and then then when a user visits the website, it loads a lot quicker. So leveraging browser caching is when you instruct browsers on how their resources should be dealt with. Things that can slow down when the response from your server does not include caching headers, or if resources are specified to be cached for only a short period of time. So leveraging caching will load your pages much faster for repeat visitors, and so will other pages that share the same resources. So one of the tools that you can use, it's pictured here, it's W3 Total Cache, and it's a great resource. It's banned from a few hosts like GoDaddy, but it also needs kind of an expertise, an expert hand to configure so that you don't break your website. It's a good option, but you do need to have kind of someone that really knows about websites at your agency. The next is going to be to optimize images. So if images load faster, your site loads faster, and it's worth noting that Google notes that images often account for most of the downloaded bytes on a page. So as a result, optimizing images can often yield some of the largest byte savings, thus improving performance. If there's less to load there, it's just going to be quicker. That's no matter what. If there's less to load, it's going to be quicker. And this is probably one of the easiest and quickest things you can do. This means that you can get some big improvements when the images on a page can be optimized to reduce their file size without really impacting their visual quality. The next is going to be to minify HTML and HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So minifying removes any unnecessary characters that are not required for the code to execute. Sources of redundant data that you can remove include code comments and formatting, removing unused code, and using shorter variable and function names. Those are just some quick ones. Again, if you have someone at your agency that's really working in the websites, they'll be able to kind of look at some of those details. The next is to enable gzip compression. So gzip compression drastically reduces the size of files sent from your server when someone visits your website. This will speed things up considerably. A quote here from GTmetrix: the reason that gzip works so well in a web environment is because CSS files and HTML files use a lot of repeated text and have lots of white space. So since gzip compresses common strings, this can reduce the size of pages and style sheets by up to 70%. So the next is going to be to reduce server response time. So server response time is the amount of time it takes for a web server to respond to a request from a browser. This is a key issue to address because if your server response time is slow, your page will display slow no matter how optimized your page is for speed in any of these other regards. If the server is slow, then everything else will be slow, even if you've worked hard to get other elements to be quick. Google says you should reduce your server response time to about under 200 milliseconds. So another way to speed up a website is avoid landing page redirects. So your site can really slow down when you have more than one redirect from the given URL to the final landing page. This sets off a redirect loop that takes time to process. A few examples of this would be if you went to example.com and then it redirected to m.example.com /home, and then that's kind of, so you've sent people from one page to the next. Another would be if you go to example.com and then it takes you to www.example.com and then the mobile page at m.example.com. Even just saying it is quite a bit of time. And that's kind of the same way you can think of it, is going, okay, we got to go to this website, now this website, and this. It's a very slow mobile experience. So the next thing you'd want to do is prioritize visible content. This is another thing you can look at. This is the exact message actually that you will get from Google's page speed tool when additional network round trips are required to render any above the fold content on a page. This above the fold content is what you see on a desktop device when you visit a page. So prioritizing visible content is the recommendation, so that you prioritize things that are kind of essential elements on your website to load first and thus quickly for users. And then defer secondary page elements like social sharing plugins, analytics, JavaScript, any of that other stuff, kind of secondary to the stuff that's visible first. So prioritize the visible content, and then secondary can be any elements like plugins, analytic, JavaScript, that type of thing. And then next here is going to be, lastly here is to eliminate render blocking JavaScript in CSS and above the fold. So JavaScript and CSS resources are often prevent your page from displaying until they're fully loaded. This is a good idea because often premature display of your above the fold content can look pretty kind of messy and sloppy. This is a common message that you'll get from Google about page speed, and addressing it can really help your page speed kind of move up a few notches. So those are kind of some tactics that you can go through. You don't need to implement all of them. Implementing a few for a small site might be good. You might have to implement a lot more of those for those bigger sites. But ultimately, those are a few tactics that you can use to speed up your clients' websites, maybe even your own website, which kind of brings me to the next thing. We're going to go through a couple case studies here, but speeding up Ventasta's blog, that's something I mentioned at the beginning, and it's something that our team has been working on. So even right now, Vendasta's website sits at 44 out of 100 for mobile speed and 60 out of 100 for desktop speed. Now, I'm aware there's probably some questions about like how credible anything I'm saying is right now, but there is more to the story here. So at Vendasta, we put a lot of work into our speed. We're clearly not where we want to be, but actually we've made a lot of improvements, and we have a very, very large site with a lot of content. So we're not quite at our goal at 80 out of 100 for both mobile and desktop. However, we're not really the only ones to struggle with this. If you go to that Google Insights tool and put in probably any of your favorite sites of very big companies, you'll find that a lot of high profile websites share a lot of the challenges that us at Vendasta have, and some even get lower scores. If you run a few sites, I think you'll understand what I mean. But basically, as I mentioned, every improvement that we make, it speeds things up and can have really big results. So at Vendasta, our marketing technologist, Adam, he said that basically the biggest change for us was on the server side of things. The way we run our WordPress website, it really gave us some opportunities to see big performance boosts by switching from App Engine Standard to App Engine Flex. And there's a few different details with our PHP version, a lot of technical stuff. But for us, a lot of server side changes really improved the speed for us. So basically, the biggest takeaway from this is that finding the best solution for your situation is key. For us, it was really important for servers. For you or your clients, it may be other details. So all these improvements, though, they set the stage for Vendasta's content initiatives that followed. So since that time, we've focused on producing a high volume of in-depth quality content without doing any speed improvements. It's unlikely that you would see much of a change, but performance, it can be hard to see. So the next here is the next website that I'm going to be talking about is iHeartRaves. This is a world leader in festival fashion, and their mission is to inspire individual creativity, empower self-expression. But combined, their two other sister brands, their Shopify stores are grossing about 20 million annually. So as an e-commerce site, iHeartRaves is distinctly aware of the financial ramifications of a poor website. And Brandon Chop, their digital marketing strategist, knew he had to improve site speed to help business and to really achieve the revenue growth. He tackled iHeartRave's speed enhancements using the following tactics. They optimized images, like we said. They used the minifying of code. They also cleaned up on-page assets. So the load speed and bounce rate results really improved. Since they made those changes, site speed has decreased from 10.25 seconds to 6.86 seconds year over year. And the bounce rate was originally at 40% and is now down to 35%. So the last one I want to talk about here is actually someone within Vendasta. He's our SEO specialist, Jubar, and he shared an instance in which he followed Google's Page Insight tools for his own site and really garnered some nice results. So Joubert, in his instant, he noted that he has a WordPress site with a loading time of more than 8 seconds and a Google page speed insight score of 43. And the things he did, he worked on image optimization, code minification, and browser cache. And now Joubert's site loads in 1.9 seconds, and the GPI score is 83. So that's a massive improvement for only kind of 3 fairly simple tasks. So for a smaller website, doing a few of these optimizations and tactics can often really improve speed. So now I did mention that we were going to talk about how to audit and optimize. And the first step in the audit and optimization process is kind of just to get a baseline look at where your site or your client's site stands and kind of get some few metrics. That way, that way you can record a starting point and you'll be able to actually track the success of your optimizations and make sure that those things are moving the needle. And these are also a great way to show any clients that the work you are doing is actually making a difference. But this also is a way for you to kind of set up, if you're talking to one of your existing clients, say, hey, we're going to do an audit. We're going to look at these things and see what we can do to speed up your website. Or if they're new clients, say, we did an audit on your website. This is what we looked at. So the first thing is to get that baseline so that you can actually chart your results. So to get the site load time, you go to your Google Analytics report, menu, behaviors, site speed, and there you'll see the overview. So you can record the average site page load time and any key pages you want to track. You can also use Pingdom and GTmetrix tools that were mentioned before. Number 2, your website Google page speed scores. You can go there, enter your URL, and kind of note those scores that you have on the page. And then bounce rate. You can see if your bounce rate improves, which would indicate that fewer people are navigating away from the site. And conversion rate are your visitors converting at a higher rate. Overall, you can track that improvement as well. So then the next step in your audit is going to be, once you kind of have those speed results, you can start looking at these different steps. Take a look at the 8 different steps, see what needs to be improved, and kind of build some tactics around which things you think you can tackle and which you believe will make the biggest change based on what we kind of talked about through those 8 steps. And then pull in help if you need it. Not everyone's developers. If a lot of this kind of went over your head, that's very fair because a lot of it is quite technical. Not everyone's a developer or designer. So if your efforts aren't working or they're breaking sites, call in some help. You can have a web designer, or Vendasta. We have lots of great marketplace products that can help you build a great fast website. We have Website Pro for fast website hosting. There's definitely the ability to get help if you're struggling to do it on your own. And then lastly here, just stay committed to site speed going forward. So you can kind of probably get a few of those easier things like image optimization, code minification, browser caching out of the way, and you'll see some pretty good results and get you to a better point. But then to really reach your goals, and this is kind of an approach that even Vendasta takes, is to have a really sustained effort to chip away at those 8 tactics to really improve that speed. So don't try to do it all at once, but really commit to working on page speed going forward to avoid any kind of burnouts, or getting overloaded with information. So it was a pretty information-heavy webinar. Thank you for sticking around. Right now, I will take any questions. I'll try my best to answer them. Although if I don't have the answer, I do also have some links here that I'm going to share. But I will try to answer them, or I can defer them to someone that will be able to answer them. So the first link I'm going to send here is actually a URL on, it's for a guide on how to sell websites to local businesses. So I'll send that one. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them now. I'll get that into the chat here. And then this next one is actually a link to the blog post that this webinar was based off of. So if you need a refresher on anything we talked about here, definitely take a look at this, and it's going to help you out. So you have the guide here and the blog post, which has a review of everything we went over today. So I'm not seeing any questions here. So if there are no questions, we will end today's webinar. Thank you everyone for joining. And next week, we're going to be talking about design and how design of a website can really impact sales, and how to use design to sell the websites. And it should be quite a bit less technical than this webinar too. So thank you everyone for joining, and we'll see you next week.